All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. It's been an interesting year, and I wanted to just sort of start out with a conversation with you a little bit about how I've been thinking about where we are as a school, but also as a culture and how we're coming out of the pandemic, right? That I think a lot of us really hoped, in certain moments, we really hoped that we were going to be able to turn the corner and get back to normal, right? And there was suggestions that that was going to be the case when the vaccine rollout happened quicker than a lot of people predicted. There was a suggestion that that was going to happen during the viral lull before Delta hit the United States. And so we've had all of these moments where we were thinking about, okay, now, this is the time. Now we're going to get back to normal. Now the mask mandates are going to lift, and we're going to be in a situation that feels like where we were before the pandemic started. But what I would like to do is just sort of talk with you through that, how I'm thinking about that, and then where we are as a school on the backside of that, because I think that there's a lot of really great news happening on campus that kind of gets lost in the questions surrounding the virus and the pandemic. So let me hand these out to you. I was going to do a presentation in here, but then I decided I would just go old school because I only have two things to share with you. So, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Fexer. And so I got to thinking a lot about this notion of pivoting, right? We talked all the time about the word, we used the word pivot again and again and again last year. And the word pivot is a word that is used in basketball a lot. And so when you talk about pivoting, you're talking about planting a foot and changing direction, right, without dribbling. And if you really think about that term and what we were asked to do as schools, as students, as parents, as faculty, there was no pivoting involved, right? If you want to continue the basketball metaphor, it was really as though we were asked to continue playing a basketball game without a hoop. Right? We completely lost our bearings in this moment because we were asked to do things that we had never been asked to do before as a school. We needed to learn how to engage students remotely. We needed to learn how to engage students remotely while at the same time engaging students in our classes. We needed to break up our instruction in unique ways that we hadn't been asked to do before. And so this notion of a pivot, I think, is a bit of a misnomer. And it really makes it seem like a simple thing, like we simply changed direction. And it wasn't that. And I think that we as parents and we as faculty, we went through a lot, and I think it's important to recognize that. So if you look at your handout here, this top graph, the fine print is very small, but it is from a training manual for mental health and human services workers in major disasters. So this chart is not strictly about our pandemic, it's just generally speaking how human beings respond to tragedy. Right? And so if you look at this, I hope that like me, you see that this feels really familiar. In the spring of 20, when we shut down schools, there was this moment of impact, right? This moment of impact and panic. And what we started to see was schools like ours, because of the talent of our staff and the talent of our leadership team, we immediately began making plans to reopen. Right? And there was this sort of heroic lift on the part of the faculty. There was heroic amounts of trust and teamwork and collaboration among our families and our students. And we all pulled together in this sort of rising emotional high when we were able to reopen school and give our kids some semblance of normalcy. But at the same time, that can't last, right? Because we're still dealing with the realities of a pandemic. We're still dealing with the realities and the fears and anxieties that come along with a worldwide disaster. And so what you start to see is this sort of disillusionment, right, where the emotional quotient, I guess you could say, of the entire community starts to dip. And that doesn't mean necessarily that we can't come out of it. It doesn't mean that we're losing our way. It doesn't mean necessarily anything so tragic and irreversible, but it does mean that it's helpful to us to recognize the fact that things aren't just normal, right? We're not just completely back to school. We're still dealing with the aftermath of a really sort of traumatic event for all of our kids and all of our families and all of our faculty. And so what we start to see is this movement through disillusionment and to Reconstruction, and that's the point that I think that we're at right now, is that we're starting to see stuff come around. We're starting to see events happen on campus that haven't happened for over a year. We're starting to see kids respond in ways that are less fearful and more normal, right? Their athletics and their arts and their academics are starting to sink into rhythm, and a familiar rhythm that they haven't before. And that's what I want to celebrate today, is to sort of start thinking about where we are as a school and the trajectory that we're starting to take in this notion of Reconstruction. And as this sort of line illustrates, we're going to have bumps in the road, right? We're going to have moments where either the virus comes back, right, where we have increased numbers and increased hospitalizations. These things are going to happen, and we're going to have to continue to roll with the punches. The realities of vaccination for availability for 5 to 12-year-olds is a big deal. That's going to change the trajectory of things. But at the same time, as things open up, there's more risk. So we're still navigating these things, but I want to posit that as a community, we're very much on the upswing at this point. It's not over, and I'm not willing to declare victory at this point, but as an institution and as a community, as a group of families, I think that we're in a position where things are really starting to look up for us. And I came to you today with that idea, and I want to go through some of the stuff that I think is really illustrative on campus of that positivity. But I also want to note this second part of the handout. And that comes from this book that I haven't gotten through yet, but it's called A Little Book of Courage for the Big Pandemic, right? And so it provides ways of thinking about this really unique experience that we're in, and a way of thinking through and past the moment that we're in, right? And so I want to remind everybody that everybody is responding to this moment really differently. I hear from parents who are just absolutely terrified that their children are going to get sick. And I totally understand that. And I hear from parents who are like, this thing is over and overblown, right? And so we've got these different responses in the moment to the reality that we're all facing, which is interesting because we're all facing the same exact realities. And yet our individual human responses to them are different. And I think that there's a moment here where we as a community just need to continue offering one another grace, because some of us are ready to reinvent. Some of us are like, okay, we learned a lot from this, we're stronger than we were before, here we go, right? And some of us, and in fact, probably most of us, are just getting back to regaining some sense of normalcy compared to where we were before the pandemic struck a year and a half ago. And some of us are very much still recovering, right? Very much still fearful, very much still dealing with the realities of a scary situation. And so understanding as a school that we have lots of different people in lots of different situations, I think is really important. And as we sort of work together to make sure to continue to support students, I think it's important for all of us as parents and as educators to understand not everybody is on the exact same page here. And so as we sort of pull out, as we sort of pull back on the airplane yoke, right? We sort of start to lift up out of the pandemic. It's still important for us to recognize and to provide each other with a degree of understanding, because not everybody's going to be in the exact same place at the exact same time. So with that in mind, what I wanted to do today before I take your questions is really just sort of run through a laundry list of all the evidence that I see that the school is growing and thriving and getting back on track, okay? And if this list sounds overwhelming, it's because it's supposed to be. The list of positive things, I started talking with the leadership team yesterday about, I said, just give me your good news, right? I've been revising a pandemic playbook for 18 months, right? I've been responding to crisis for 18 months. We've been responding to these difficult situations constantly. And I knew that the good stuff that's happening at our school, the good stuff that's happening with our kids, would actually outweigh some of those concerns if we just take a moment to take a look at them. So, if you'll bear with me, our traditions are pretty much back on track, right? Every year, the Board of Trustees provides the faculty with the Thanksgiving turkey. So I've been here 16 years. I haven't bought a Thanksgiving turkey for 16 years, which is a really great tradition. And so tomorrow after school, all the faculty walks out and we have a delivery truck on campus. So that's back in session, okay? Next, the pancake breakfast was the best event of its kind that we've ever had. There was a huge community event. We had more attendees than we've ever had before. We had the trunk or treat event, which was the second annual event. We had more people there than we did in the year prior, and that was a really great community event for all divisions to come together. We had our first ever third grade bake sale, right? Because we had to make it up for those second graders, so they actually had the first ever Valentine's bake sale in the fall on the mall. And that was an incredible event. They raised a lot of money for the NSPCA, and we look forward to doing the February bake sale with second graders like we always have, right? We also have plans to continue our traditional holiday assembly. We're going to do that outdoors so that we can get all 900 kids together and do the activities that we do every year, have the kids performing. We're going to invite parents to come out to that as well and build another community event for the holiday assembly. Moving forward, our annual fund number is better than it's been in over 6 years, maybe my entire headship. We're at $241,000 already for annual fund this year. So thank you to those of you who have given, and if you haven't, remember, the calendar year ends in December like it does every year. Admissions were well over where we were even a year ago. We saw a surge in applications and inquiries last year because we were open, right, and other schools weren't. This year we're even ahead of where we were in inquiries and applications from year over year to last year. So that's looking really strong. We look forward to another really strong year in upper school, to actually filling the upper school with close to 300 students. Turning to what kids are doing, if you just look at the arts really had a hard time last year because we couldn't congregate. And so much of what we do in the arts and in this building have to do with getting together, right? And having sort of communal activities. So the middle school performed Apocalypse on Scholar Lane, which was adapted and written by the students in large part, which was incredible. The upper school production of Eurydice is this weekend, and that's the first main stage upper school production in over a year. The middle school carousel of electives. We started asking middle school students to do all of the arts electives during the pandemic. And we did that because we wanted to keep pods, right? We wanted to keep cohorts together so that if we had to quarantine, we knew who to quarantine. But that turned out to be such a great opportunity that those middle school kids have a chance to test out all of these different arts electives. And what that has meant is that arts enrollment in middle up to 9th grade is surging. We're seeing more kids participating in the arts than we have in the past, as it's simply and ironically as a result of the pandemic. Meadows singers are going to be performing at the Smith Center in April. We've had successful band and strings concerts this year already, which we weren't allowed to do last year. And like I said, the winter assembly is going to be happening this December on December 10th. Beginning school. I'm just going to run through some of the things that are happening in our various divisions. In beginning school, as Sarah said, no state championships for the 4-year-olds yet, but they had 13 students participate in tennis and 9 in soccer this fall in MAPS, which I think is great as we try to build that pipeline from beginning school up through varsity level sports in the beginnings and lower schools. We have a varsity coach partnering with our staff in lower school or in beginning school to do movement and PE exercises. That's our varsity tennis coach, JL. And then finally, we held our first stage performance with a live audience since February of 2020. So it's been a long time, and families and parents are back in the beginning school watching kids perform on stage, which is obviously a great Meadows tradition. In lower school, all the students new to the Meadows this year are all carrying A to B plus averages, which is excellent, right? We've got kids new to our rigorous program, and those kids are thriving in our building. Secondly, we started doing baseline reading assessments in first grade last year. What we're seeing is year over year, this year's first graders are much stronger, a big improvement over last year's scores, and some of that is due to a very strong kindergarten class that came in a couple years ago, but it's also due to the new materials adopted in kinder and first. The teachers are finding them more rigorous, and the kids are more engaged at home with the new books. Fifth grade student council is doing some really fun activities. They did karaoke at lunchtime, and it was incredible. Well, not all the singing was incredible, but it was incredible that they all supported one another. They were huge fans, and they want to do karaoke at lunch regularly. So they're engaging with a whole lot of new stuff in the lower school. In middle school sports, we did incredibly well. I know that our varsity teams get a lot of attention, and rightfully so. We may walk away from tomorrow with 4 state championships in the fall season alone, which is incredible, but I'll get to that in a second. In middle school, we had, in cross country, we had a 6th grader take 2nd overall in the league, a 6th grader take 7th and 12th overall on the boys' side, 7th grade girl in a top 20 finish in cross country. We had tons and tons of volleyball teams, as we always do, and they played in, the 8th grade played an independent schedule and finished the season with a championship in a tournament. So we also had we had 3 teams playing in the semifinals at least in 6th and 7th grade volleyball as well. So the future is bright. In flag football, the 8th grade team came up with a winning record. The 6th and 7th grade teams are actually playing each other for the championship in their league, right? So they're the top 2 teams, and we'll see who gets bragging rights at the end of the season. I believe that's tonight. I believe that's tonight, Mr. Siegel? No? It's Saturday. Okay. Oh yeah, I jumped back to volleyball. My mistake. Middle school robotics has their first meet on Saturday. We're fielding an all 7th grade team in the 7th through 12th grade division. So these 7th graders are going to be competing against high school students in robotics. Junior Classics League. We had a student in 8th grade tie a senior in the etymology exam for the top score. Picasso Club is planning an international food festival. NJHS recently had their induction ceremony that I was proud to speak at. Our Quiz Bowl team is 6-0, and as Mr. Siegel reminds me, they're 7-0 if you count the match that they won against the faculty. So I was there. I actually volunteered to take part in that, and they smoked us. They're a very, very strong Quiz Bowl team, and there just weren't enough questions on the books that I've taught, apparently. So, in addition, the science and English departments are collaborating on a new project this year. So the kids are coming up with a science project, and then they need to write a report about it for their English class. So there is some sort of cross-disciplinary work there, writing across the disciplines, which I really appreciate. The top science projects will be entered in the county science fair as well. So lots of really great stuff happening in middle school. Upper school, I mean, the story of the day in athletics in upper school is, as you know, the state championships that we've seen. Girls golf, in their inaugural season, not only won the state title, but the top golfer in the state was a sophomore here. So yeah, we had a really great run there, and the future's bright because they're a young team. Also, the boys tennis team was a state runner-up, so they lost in a heartbreaker, so they had every opportunity. It was almost another state title for us. The girls tennis team ran away with the state title. They did an incredible job all season long. The girls volleyball team won state on Saturday, and no one even came close. They didn't lose a game the entire tournament. So they won 3-0, 3-0, 3-0 all the way through the tournament. I got there a little late because I was at the semifinal football game, and I ran over to see it. I almost missed it because they beat the team so quickly and easily. So they were really incredible, and they're also young, so they should be good again next year. As you know, the boys football team is playing tomorrow, 9 o'clock in the morning at Allegiant Stadium. So that's a really huge opportunity for our kids, for our community to come together. We're putting together a tailgate. Just, donuts and coffee at 7:30. We're going to get you information on where that's going to be as soon as we can get it from NIAA, right? So we've planned it. We're actually the only school that's being allowed to do a tailgate because they're doing all the games back to back to back, right? So since we're first, the parking lot's open for us. So that's a pretty cool experience, and I look forward to seeing you all there. We're taking the entire upper school there. right? So we'll at least have 250 students in attendance. I'm hearing from lots of parents that are taking their lower and middle school students to the game, which is a great community experience. I think I'm driving a couple of fifth graders with my son to the game, so it should be a great time for everybody. But it's also interesting and important for us to remember that we don't run sports for the sake of winning state titles, right? We run sports for the experiences that we think that it provides student athletes. The character development, the teamwork, the selflessness, the sacrifice, the time management that goes into it. And it's not just a handful of sort of elite athletes that are participating at this point. It's important for us to remember that in an upper school that has roughly 250 kids, half the students in the fall season were participating in a sport. Right? And so we're up to 80+% of students in a given year are participating in interscholastic athletics, but in our first season of the year we had 120 or 130, something like that, and we're already signed up for winter sports, and we've got over 120 kids signed up again, right? So half of the upper school at any given moment is participating in interscholastic athletics, which is really incredible. Turning to the academic side of upper school, I don't know how many of you know this, but our current senior class is small. They have been since they were in 8th grade. And so we've only got about 43, 45 students in that grade. Of those 40-some students, 12 have been recognized by the National Merit Scholarship Organization. A quarter of our senior class is being recognized. That's 8 commended and 4 are National Merit finalists. 10% roughly of our senior class, which is unbelievable, right? We have 2 Coca-Cola semifinalists, and we don't even have one of those in any given, in every given year. So 2 out of 43 is really, truly incredible. We have a Moorhead-Cain semifinalist. The Moorhead-Cain Scholarship is a really unique opportunity out of UNC Chapel Hill. Extremely exclusive, and we've got somebody in the running for that scholarship as well. College admissions are just starting to roll in. One highlight is we've got 3 students accepted to the Colorado School of Mines, which is a small program, science and engineering based, very, very selective. So that just gives you an example of what we're up to with these kids. They're going to have a really great college acceptance year, and we're really excited to support them in that. Our Puerto Rico trip is on for 10th graders. We've got 68 students signed up to go, which is obviously the vast majority of the class. College trips are on for juniors. We are navigating some of the restrictions, the COVID restrictions in major cities on the East Coast. So, we're looking at, we had planned to fly to New York. Difficulty there is you can't go to a restaurant if you're not vaccinated. So we're trying to figure out and navigate with our kids and with our tour group to make sure that we give the kids the best experience possible. But still, this year's homecoming was, in Ms. Larson's estimation, and she's been at the school for 15 years, was the best attended school dance that she's ever seen. And so the kids are here, they're excited, they were at the homecoming dance, they were supporting each other, and it was a good time for everybody. So also academically, we added 2 more advanced topics courses, which are our designed courses that are at or above the AP level. So they're really sort of selective, unique courses. We added 2 more of those this year. We added Mandarin as a language this year, and that's going well. We added digital art as a discipline, and if you walk down the hallways here, you can see some of the digital art that our kids are producing. That is a program that we expect to go from a part-time teacher to a full-time teacher next year, so we're excited about that. And finally, community courses that we've sent emails out about off and on throughout the year, where we've got everyone from students to faculty to parents to trustees teaching classes simply for the sake of learning. Right? So we're trying to tackle the notion that kids only come to school to get grades. They only come to school to take tests. They only come to school for achievement as opposed to education. And if we're an institution that wants to prize love of learning, we felt like, okay, how can we tackle this? And how can we get kids to love learning for learning's sake? And so Mr. Rosenfels and a number of other kids and a number of students came up with this idea, and we've tackled community courses this year. So right now, we've got courses in culinary arts, in finance, medical training, self-defense, film production. And Wednesday mornings, kids get to sit in and they get to learn something just because they're curious. There's no homework, no grades, no pressure. It is simply showing up to learn because they want to learn. And that's what an education should be about. So we're really proud of that, really excited. And beyond that, I mean, I think that I've probably missed a bunch of positive stuff. You know, I just went through 3 pages single-spaced of positive news on our campus, stuff that's happening in spite of everything that's going on in the world. And I think that it's a real testament not only to the students, but to the faculty who have worked extra hard to make sure to bring this school year closer to a sense of normal. But also, I think it's a testament to parents, their willingness to trust the institution, their willingness to support what we're doing. And so I thank you, and I'm really grateful that this year has got off to such a great start. And with that, once again, thank you for coming this morning.